Hey, we've got me, Taras, and Jason of CompanionTechnology.net. And so today we're doing a quick interview. He's an experienced technology freelancer, and I wanted to have a chat with him and get some more information about what he's doing, as well as uh, maybe explore some of our mutual interests with the Liberty Space and Wealth Battle, which is a community that both of us are in. So cool. CompanionTechnology.net. It's a cool website. It sounds like you're
Thank you.
making more enhancements as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. It's decent right now. I actually might even change the name of it. Though it should still function as a redirect. So like if you go, yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because it's a mouthful and .net in the space is like, ooh, like unless you don't like if it's like a premium nice domain, if I had companion.net, then that would be pretty nice. But I might change it to companionops.com. Because anyway, I think that would just it. Yeah, I was talking to folks about that in Wealth Battle about like what about Companion HQ, and that's something that I'm getting into right now is like just kind of like naming and branding in a sense because yeah, I've been into computers since I was a kid. My dad got me a computer when I was in like no, I was like 6 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, I learned how to type playing like RuneScape and
Yep.
Maple Story. And So that was just, like my childhood and got hacked and got scammed
Yep.
and learned about economics through trading gold and silver and mesos and all that stuff. Yeah, I was ever since then like I just really liked it. But what really sort of got me into it as a profession was Linux. Um, and that was I started using Linux about a decade ago. And That's been really exciting. I'm a huge fan of it. We're running on Linux right now on
Awesome.
my computer, so it's yeah, I'm a huge fan of it.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been meaning to get Linux set up on this thing for a while and just haven't. So I think
Yeah,
that's
well,
the next step is just get the VM going, right?
yeah, exactly. Or honestly, what I recommend people is it's hard to do the shift. Like I know that from experience, and so I just recommend like getting a secondhand computer from like Craigslist or eBay or something, and then because installing it and then like data failures and all like like I made mistakes, right? Like as a kid and still today, I have data losses and things like that. That's what I recommend to people. And Linux is kind of like the reason that I named my company Companion Technology is because Linux doesn't spy on you. Like unless like at least well, some variants don't. Some distributions, as they're called, or distros for short. Yeah, they don't have telemetry unless you allow them. Windows, you can disable it, but you have to be a little bit technical to do that. And Mac is completely impossible. Pardon, it was iOS or I don't even know OS X. I can't remember. I'm not a Mac person
Mhm.
whatsoever. I do have respect for their new hardware, but I don't use them. So I actually had to leave a client who we were building a pretty cool software. I was doing automated testing for them, making sure that their app was good when it was sent to production.
Nice.
Though, yeah, it's just I had to use Windows and Mac VMs the whole time. Like, look, I just can't do this because like it was just so much friction kind of switching over to that. But yeah, that's how I kind of like started off in the IT field. It kind of just came very organically. I dropped out of university kind of because of freedom and liberty. I was going to a state university and just couldn't handle the politics and the
Yeah.
I mean, just to be real, like just indoctrination, like being in macroeconomics was kind of the most revealing how opinionated they are with Keynesian economics and how, like, if you want to be an engineer, you have to not do engineering. Like, what would,
Mm.
history about they what about like their history about the United States and what it should be and things like that was just so distasteful for me. And that's what got me to leave. And I was like, I was floating for about 9 months and I tried to make websites. I did not know enough. So I was really sort of like thrown into it, didn't make enough money. I had to move back to my mom's for about 9 months. So yeah, that's like, yeah, I'm huge into liberty, freedom, voluntarism, anarchism, whatever you want to call it. I That's what I believe in. I think coercion and thefts and the threat of force and violence is just wrong. But I'm not sure if that's exactly what you want to talk about.
No,
Just
that's
let
definitely
me. Yeah.
cool. And for me, my experience was very similar.
Mm.
So when I was in college, I was learning about the Keynesian macroeconomic stuff, and I'm from the Soviet Union, and I'm like,
Oh
well, if this is
wow.
true, right? The government spends more money and the economy grows, right? So the Soviet
Mm.
Union must be doing really great, right? Because we had all government control.
Right.
And then it just doesn't add up. And then Ron Paul hits the scene
Mm.
and start going down that. So that was really cool. It's interesting how you talked about, your journey to entrepreneurship being
Mm.
pretty rocky, and that's kind of a fear of
Yeah.
mine. So I've been working at this company for about 7 years now,
Mm.
working on software, and it's got its charms, but I'm also curious about freelancing. But yeah, that's kind of the concern is, am I going to
Mm.
be able to make my house payments?
Totally. Yeah, that's a big deal. What I would recommend is this really great book called Education of Millionaires. Oh, hold on. Michael Ellsberg, I think, is the author. Could be wrong. Feel free to fact check me there. And that was recommended to me, and it was great advice. Basically, he provides these four pretty meaningful steps because he thinks being a starving artist, like what I was trying to do as soon as I dropped out, was a bad call to just kind of like throw yourself, like sink or swim, because a lot of people give that advice. It's terrible advice. What he suggests is take your full-time job, and I believe something like 4 hours a work week as well suggests this, is like just be efficient, be like make your money, take care of finances, feel comfortable, and then the second step would be, okay, well, now start doing, see if you can turn one of your passions into a career, or a little bit of side hustle income, right? And then after that, see how you can make it more full time, and then eventually, you know making it that full time leap, which that's exactly what I did. So after dropped out, spent some time with my mom. I actually got lucky. My mom was searching for a job for my sister, and I got a job offer at a web hosting company. And they were looking to relocate me, and I said yes. So they took me all the way out to Denver, Colorado. And so it was a great experience. It was the strangest experience too when I did the phone interview, because um, there's this thing with the when you're like a Linux nerd, most people just interact with the computer. And so if you're not interacting with the computer, then you just kind of like make up words, like or pronunciations of words, I mean, or like you never see someone else do it. So now, like I'm saying it out loud and just kind of realizing, like, well, I know this. Like this is something that I'm used to with when it comes to like making a web host, like doing my own LAMP stack, for example. That's Linux, Apache, PHP, um, MySQL. I forgot that
Yeah.
one. And so I just knew all the answers to their test, and I got the job pretty much instantly. And that was in 2017. I worked for that company for almost no, I think it was like 2 years or so. I think about 2 years. And in that time, I paid off my student loans. It's kind of the worst of both worlds. I had student debt and no paper to sort of, but the paper, I honestly, I really do encourage folks like to really, really consider if they need to go to college. The push for college is really irks me, because it's such a money making machine right now. It doesn't have the interest of education in mind on so many different levels. So yeah, I followed that advice pretty much to a T. And once I had a runway of like 3 to 6 months, and I got my first client in my first cold client, more specifically, I was helping friends and family out. My first cold client I got in 2019 off a website called Upwork. And with sites like that, I don't know for certain, but what I did was I traded my skill for reputation. So I kind of broke even, or even worked for like 20 an hour, like
Yeah.
building up that reputation. And yeah, after that, I just try to wear as many hats as I could. Any problem, I let the free market sort of push me around. And I think there's an important aspect of this journey. My mom is really into like personal development and being financially successful. And so when I was a kid, she put me to a summer business camp. And I thought it was the coolest thing to go to a college and like learn from business people. And I actually have a mentor that I met to this day. And I still stay in contact with him. And during that dropout process in college, he like, liberty minded folks just think differently, uh, in a way that's outside the box. It's not what, like, some people are like, oh no, finish college, be safe, blah blah blah. They'll provide like other options. And so the mentorship, and then I called as many people as I could that I think could advise me. And it was great. It was like 2 people from that business camp, 3 actually. Now that I think about it, I don't really keep in contact with all of them at this time, but it was just super helpful because I was just like, look, like I don't know if this is for me. And they're like, oh well, like do you have money to travel? I recommend traveling. Like, so anyway, yeah, having that mentorship was big. And then having that sort of libertarian or entrepreneur influence was also like very guiding, very helpful.
Awesome. So you kind of mentioned just taking on as many projects as possible, wearing as
Mm.
many hats as possible, trying to solve as many problems as you can. Do you have any sort of specific advice as to how you keep your skills up
Mm.
to date and competitive?
Good question. I love to learn, and um at first I actually I got this advice from Derek Sivers, is try as many lanes as you can, and see which one makes sense, because eventually you'll get to a point as a freelancer where it really doesn't make sense to do the same thing, like do everything. Because it, like, if you're trying to make a business, that's not how to do a business. It is how to be a freelancer. And it's also a great way to get experience. Now, to answer your question, I can't, like, for myself, because I just enjoy learning so much. It improves everything. I read books, I listen to audiobooks. Podcasts I actually do a little bit less of nowadays. Although I have listened to a handful of podcasts in the past. I just don't do as much driving as I used to, and I think that's what changed it. And then of course courses online, Udemy, Linda, YouTube. Oh my gosh. Honestly, like the internet, like if it weren't for the internet, I don't know where I would be.
Right.
And there's just so much free education on it. Of course, there's a lot. It's a double-edged sword because of well, the exploitative nature of a lot of technology nowadays. It's something that really makes me passionate, and that's what I want to do with software. Is I want to make softwares that we're friends with, like not software that was like that's spying on us and exploiting us. And so the free software community or free software foundation, even although on paper kind of antithesis of libertarianism, they do have a sort of more socialist mindset of like,
Yeah,
anyway,
people deserve
it,
it.
yeah, exactly, like of and they're sort of it's a really interesting philosophical conversation as well. It's like the GPLv3 GNU public license or general public license is basically what they called a copy left. So they're using the law to force people to use it in open source settings always. It's the most strict open source license versus an MIT open source license is like anyone can do anything with this. If you want to turn it into a proprietary software, you're welcome to do so. So it's a little bit more free, but at the same time, it may encourage proprietary use of software as well. So there's some weird nuances with that, and that's another thing that really like when you dive into Linux as a teen. I had one person who was getting his master's at the time. It was someone I knew, and he was the one that dual booted my PC, my laptop actually, and it was his laptop that I purchased from him. He was going through college, so I couldn't get direct access with him. So he's like, "Here, go on this IRC." And so yeah, I'm rocking on IRCs, asking people help for troubleshooting, and it was the coolest experience because you have all these people that are just willing to help you because they enjoy the software too. They love the free open source software community. So that was just super, super influencing me. It's like it was just such a cool experience to be like, oh, cool. Like I'm in the in crowd. Like it was so complicated to me, still is. Like just I can kind of just understand the gradients a little bit better. And it was, yeah. So that was another sort of great experience. So yeah, in terms, I know that I'm kind of trailing off from your initial question though. Like it's a little bit hard for me to answer because some people think they have to kind of go out of their way to learn a skill. And really, like, I just kind of allowed myself to just drift in a way. And that, again, comes with its costs. So if I wanted to learn Docker, for instance, I just started learning Docker or learn a little bit of Rust. I even learned a little bit of like embedded coding, like systems, little microcontrollers and things like that, which I don't use for my work at all, though it's just fun. So that's, I guess, how I would suggest someone else get skills. Like even if you think it's irrelevant, like it might come back. For example, actually, my customer service experience at this web hosting company, I was taking phone calls. Now phone calls and customer service, I'm phenomenal in. I have one of my best clients. I'm helping them out with technical support as a technical support manager. And I didn't plan that. I didn't think that was a translatable skill. And so that's another reason that don't be a starving artist. Like go to something that's even adjacent, or even if it's not. Like I think even if you get like there's so many roles, like a Starbucks manager. If you become a Starbucks manager, you'll learn how to manage people, right? It might be not easy, but at least you get that experience. So like the inaction of it, I think is the worst part. So yeah, anything really that you're interested in, I'd say dive in and start learning. It's not necessarily like a lot of people go through programming, for instance, and they think, oh, I'll be a programmer and get like a 70K job.
Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't translate very well. And I've tried that myself with something like Rust, for instance. Rust is a programming language. It's the new hotness. And I tried to learn it and it didn't stick. And I just kind of like let it fall off, because if you're like, oh, I'm going to be I don't know, like just whatever, just enjoyment you have within learning the thing anyway. Because like the compulsory nation, forcing yourself to do something, I don't think is a good way to go about it for yourself.
Cool. Yeah, that's something that I've been struggling with is like my job. I'm mostly focused on automated testing. And then
Mm-hmm.
I'll also be poking around LinkedIn. Well, I think websites are really cool. So I built my
Yeah.
own website. And then like I'll be poking around LinkedIn. I'll see stuff about, security and
Mm.
DevOps and Amazon Web Services and data engineering. And it's just kind of like easy to get overwhelmed by. There's so much out there.
Yeah. IT's nuts. Like, yeah, it's so huge. It's impossible to know it all, which is really like it makes me sad because it's like, oh, it's so much cool
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
but you have to, to just knowing that it's impossible, I think is kind of enough to be like, okay, well, this brings me enjoyment now. Here's an example for like the program JavaScript framework for front end that I know the best is React. However, one project of mine, just a pet project, is using Svelte. Now I could stick with Svelte and kind of get through it and like learn it, though it prevents me from the like interacting with the software and pushing features to the users. And so instead of sort of like, going towards whatever seems shiny, doing what works, I think is kind of a nuanced point. Now, and on the other hand, like if if you have a choice or I don't know, if you have like a good team and a good way to learn it, if it's not like if you're just a junior on the project and you can kind of get your teeth sunk in, don't suggest React because you're most used to it. That's the time to learn. So yeah, I can always say something and then find a way that it doesn't apply to. But yeah, anyway, that's interesting though. I think IT is just so vast that I have that problem too, just trying to figure out what I want to do. And with companion technology, I still have a trouble as I'm switching from. It was actually really in the start of last year that I kind of started the transition between freelance and business owner.
Mhm.
It's still just me, though. That's a really cool shift. If you can float as a freelancer, like that's great. You're trading your time for money, and it might be higher um, than Starbucks or whatever, and might be a little bit more adjacent to what you want to do in the world. Though when you're switching over to that business, then you start have to make like procedures and repeatable tasks. A book that Kaysen from WealthBattle recommend is Profit First, and that was extremely helpful and to describe how to sort of narrow down and start to let the Mike Michalowicz has another book called The Pumpkin Plan. And the metaphor basically is that if you want a pumpkin to grow really big, you have to remove the other pumpkins from the network. I don't know what the technical term is for
Yeah, I know
pumpkins,
what you're
but
talking about. You're sort of pruning your garden, right? You're getting rid of some of the, I don't know if they're necessarily weaker plants, but like you're making room for your stronger plant to grow.
exactly. Yeah, it's the making room that is important. And then uh, duplicating your best client is another sort of idea that's also in Profit First, though I think he highlights it more in the Pumpkin Plan. And that's Mike Michalowicz. So, and as you can hear, like I've just been reading since I was, 14 years old, and but I hate it. Ironically, I hated reading in school
Yeah,
because you're just being
you're
forced
forced
to,
to it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I did enjoy some of it. And what I had to do was like get the audio version because I actually have like a minor dyslexia, and so especially for fiction books, it's hard for me to read it between the lines and get the nuances of something. So I have for fiction, I'll have to listen to the audio as I see the words. Which anyone struggling with reading, I suggest that. Um, and if you really want to understand a topic, I think that's just such a cool way to do it. You're like, I get so engaged doing that. So yeah, I mean, I'm mentioning all these books, and that's why it's like, how do you develop more skills? You just, I don't know, like for myself, it's just kind of a part of my life. So I guess make it a hobby. There are a lot of folks that say like, the golden hour, like the first hour you wake up, start reading. And yeah, that's a good suggestion. At the same time, like maybe you're not a morning, what do they call it? Morning lark. Maybe you're a night owl. And if reading's not your shtick, then so it is. If pop on an audiobook and go for a walk, maybe that's how you learn best. So learning how you learn, I think, is kind of the best answer there.
Right on. Yeah, maybe one last question is how did you
Yeah.
get interested in Wealth Battle?
So my brother actually, he and I, we have grown in the Liberty space together. Um, we were both disillusioned and sort of like didn't know, like it was so confusing to us. Oh, they were like, well, this sounds really true. At the time, he started on a vegan diet. I started on a vegan diet. He was the one that convinced me. He's like, yo, man, you should try meatless Mondays. And I was like, okay, cool. Eventually, I just kind of trailed into that diet and that lifestyle. Eventually, we were just really about liberty. He's coming from one perspective, I'm coming from another, and like we both met there. And so, yeah, it was actually like probably in 2021. No, it was even earlier than that. He was convincing me like, you gotta talk to him. You gotta talk to him. I'm like, yeah, maybe later, maybe later. Like I'm busy. And as soon as Case and I started to talk, my fellow ASIN, as he likes to call me, we really hit it off. And Wealth Battle has just been super, super impactful for, again, that bridge between freelancer and entrepreneur and business owner. There's just so many resources and ideas, and just reinforcing things like, oh yeah, I knew that, but I'm not doing it. So I got to, and then just having people like yourself to spit ideas around and just be inspired by each other. So many amazing minds and compassionate hearts. It's yeah, that's what drew me to it. And so it's a no brainer at this point.
Awesome. Well, I think that's been a great interview, and I'll let you get back to your regularly scheduled activities.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun. I don't know one person that doesn't like talking about themselves. So it's nice to have a little bit of space to give a quick rundown of my story. So I appreciate it. Thanks for having
Cool.
me.
Yeah. All right. Be very well.
Thank you. You as well.